Agile certifications, courses, various other trainings, and all of that is very good when you're transitioning into Agile delivery space. But what kind of actual experience do you need? I keep talking about experience everywhere, in the books and in these videos. So today we'll be talking specifically about what experience I recommend that you get before realistically expecting to be successful applying for a Scrum Master role in this modern competitive job market. Let's talk about this in a second. Hi guys, Dimitri here once again with another video for you from joinagile.com. Alright, experience. What kind of experience do you need to be a good job applicant, specifically in Agile delivery and project management space? It's a competitive space. There's a lot of competition there, especially in Australia, I'm sure in other countries as well, because it's a popular area, professional area to transition into. Alright, short version, TLDR, too long didn't read version for you, is that you need practical, hands-on experience. And what is the best way to get that experience, you ask? The best way to get that experience, guys, and that is Captain Obvious on deck, is to seek lateral or sideways, or whatever the term you prefer, movement within your current company. So if you are in a company currently in a certain role that is close to Agile delivery space, or that belongs to Agile delivery space, but the role is different to the Scrum Master or any sort of Agile leadership type of role, then you should seek lateral, sideways movement within your company, and it should be an pretty easy transition for you compared to people who are transitioning from industries and professional areas that have nothing to do with digital delivery, software delivery, anything like that, right? So today we will talk about some of the relatively obvious transitioning kind of paths, I suppose, and about some roles that are more suited for transition. So we will start with software developer. I was a software developer, and it took me a little bit of time, but I have transitioned to Scrum Master via position of a BA, business analyst. I will go back to this in a second. So you don't have to necessarily do exactly what I did. If you are a software developer right now, first of all, chances are that you're working in an Agile environment, or at least you're exposed to it somehow within an organization, unless it's a very tiny organization that works for some sort of big client that is stuck in waterfall, which happens, and then you're kind of forced to work waterfall way. But I cannot imagine that there would be that many cases of that. So I imagine if you're a software developer, there will be some sort of manifestation of Agile within your area. So the recommendation that I'm making here is that you need to talk to your Scrum Master, project manager, anyone else who you kind of functionally report to, so that you don't basically just, I don't know, oh, I'm a Scrum Master from today, You can't do that. What you can and should do is you need to speak to people who are currently Agile coaching in the area, or who is currently looking after you, iteration manager, Scrum Master, and express your wish to basically take on some of the responsibilities of a Scrum Master, or perhaps just simply to ask them to give you a chance to perhaps act in a role. That is probably going to be the most sort of natural way for you to get exposed to being a Scrum Master, and then be able to claim within your CV that you had experience of doing something that a normal Scrum Master does. In my particular case, as I mentioned just before, I thought that my environment wasn't Agile enough, perhaps, and I didn't feel confident enough to jump straight into the shoes of a Scrum Master. That's why I chose perhaps an easier and slightly slower path, but logical path to become a BA, business analyst first, Agile business analyst, and then transition further into a Scrum Master, because business analyst is closer to business, walls, writing user stories, understanding the life cycle, and focusing not on software development as such, but more on the process, on the actual, being exposed a little bit to the delivery of the piece, starting with requirements and finishing with ticking off cards as done, or assisting the team in doing that. So as a business analyst, let's say you are a business analyst, first of all, it's a job that is easier to transition to from software developer than a Scrum Master, which is why I'm saying that middle steps like that, I think, are also a good, not even a tip, it's a pretty obvious thing, but not a lot of people see it. They think that's where I am and that's where I want to be and that's where they go. But there are usually steps in between that a lot of people omit and a lot of guides don't tell you about. So I think that this is practical, and it comes from a person who did it actually. I did it personally, right? Scrum specifically as one of Agile methodologies, obviously not the only one, but it prescribes certain events and certain other things which I trust you should be aware of and you should be familiar with, at least on paper. At least you should have learned the Scrum Guide, because none of this is teaching you Scrum, guys. Please don't tell me that I'm not giving you enough information about Scrum. I'm not intending to. I'm telling you how to get employed and how to be a better Scrum Master, how to understand what matters. So as a business analyst, you should do pretty much the same thing as a software developer. You should talk to your Scrum Master or manager and say, look, I'm actually looking to move on into the other thing. Perhaps I could take ownership a little bit more end-to-end of the process of, say, sprint planning meeting. Yeah. So in a sprint planning meeting as a business analyst, you already have a responsibility of presenting the stories that product owner has prepared, if you are even in the picture. Normally, business analyst is not someone who is in classic Scrum, like there is no role of a business analyst. But in reality, in medium to big companies, even small companies I see right now, they have business analysts. Business analysts are proxy between the product owner or some sort of other manifestation of business and the team. So business analysts are proxy product owners, yeah, for the purposes of this discussion, and coming from a practical place here. So as a business analyst, you are already doing a lot. I think that Scrum Master, sometimes Scrum Master does, sometimes business analyst does, right? I, for example, I'm an iteration manager for a big company. I do a lot of things, but at the same time, business analyst almost always takes ownership of a large part, not all of it, but a large part of the sprint kickoff, for example, a sprint planning meeting, yeah? Where they not just present the user stories to the team, but what you could do as a business analyst, you could go one step further and you could ask iteration manager or Scrum Master, your current one, to say, hey, could I please try myself at planning poker or however else you're estimating? Can I go through estimating phase with the team and you just observe and kind of maybe guide me, perhaps? So essentially, all of these approaches of transitioning, yeah, that I recommend in this case, how you get that practical experience, they come from the place of where you're at currently, and then start doing a little bit more that takes you a little bit further into the shoes of a Scrum Master, essentially. Yeah, it's a pretty obvious thing, right? And business analyst, in my opinion, is one of those that are the closest to the goal. They are the closest to where they need to be. Another reasonable kind of suggestion came from my friend who I know very well. He's a very successful product owner. So he says, look, I think it's interesting because a lot of people, not necessarily himself, but a lot of people who are in product ownership capacity, they are considering to be iteration managers, senior iteration managers. They're perhaps not considering a junior role of a Scrum Master, but they're thinking about becoming an iteration manager or a Scrum Master. So my recommendation there is, I'm not questioning your motives of why, because product owner is an interesting, already a very good kind of interesting role within an Agile process, very valuable and stuff like that. But some people, they would like to be a little bit more responsible, not for the product, but for the delivery part of it. It's fine, fair. If you want to transition into that, again, talk to your Scrum Master, ask them to take a step back, perhaps coach you, and take a different perspective of not the value of the product, focus on other things, and start working a little bit more on optimizing the delivery for the team, facilitating for them, coaching them on the practices of Scrum. Ultimately, let's not forget, the role of Scrum Master is to coach the team on how to do Scrum properly, right? End of the story. That's everything else is added benefits, and removing impediments, doing other things. But ultimately, what Scrum Master is there to do is to teach the team and company and product owner, surrounding environment about Scrum, and that is what you would need to have as a primary kind of thought in your head when whoever you are, when you're transitioning into that space and trying to get that practical experience. So for product owner, very important to let go of the view of the product and maximization of value, and look at it more from how do I make that team work better, understand Scrum better, and deliver that product, commit to the amount of work that they can realistically do within the sprint or iteration, and remove impediments on the way, help them with that. Finally, the fourth role that is very often kind of transitions due to having default certification that was obtained because the company certified them or something else, and they of course see the process as well, quite well, except from a very different perspective, is project managers. Project managers, I said it before in one of the previous videos, project managers, without trying to have a go at them, they are not as well suited straight away from being a project manager to step into the shoes of Scrum Master and be good at it. I don't believe that they are, provided that they were a good project manager, because good project manager takes control of the situation, direct control in terms of predictability of resources, where we're going to be at which point in time, risks, and all that kind of stuff. They are very upfront and very direct in their expectation of control and the expectations that they are reporting and everything else that they're trying to report back to the program that sits above them. As a project manager who perhaps decided genuinely that they're interested in Scrum, they kind of embraced this a little bit in their head, attended the training and read the Scrum guide and all that kind of stuff, I think it's very important for you to understand that you will have a little bit of a more perilous path of simply letting go of that idea of direct control that project manager has over everything, right? You need to make it more about the team and more about the incremental observation of how the team is progressing and incremental pivoting when it's required. So you need to get to the idea that the truth will be revealed as you go, as opposed to trying to predict it all the way straight away to the end. That is kind of, just to put it very simply and in simple terms. You would need to talk to your Scrum Master as well, to your Scrum Master or Agile coach, and you need to get yourself invited as a silent observer into pretty much every Scrum ritual, as some people refer to them, or event as the Scrum Guide describes them. You need to be in the, obviously, retrospectives, showcases that you have attended already perhaps as part of the program. You need to be in the stand-ups as a silent observer, not recommended practice, but you need to be there because you are the furthest away from that world. You need to embrace the world before you can realistically even think that you can be a Scrum Master. Maybe it will be nauseating for you, I don't know. You need to try. But regardless, it's once you understood a little bit what it stands for, and if you think that this is something for you, then you do exactly the same thing as the other roles would do in this particular case, transitioning roles. You would talk to your Scrum Master and you would ask them to give you an opportunity to lead or facilitate one of those meetings, sprint planning meeting, understand how it goes, see a structure, observe how the Scrum Master does it, and start doing it yourself. Then you can honestly put on your CV that you had practical hands-on experience of actually doing this and doing some leadership in the team, right? And then once you feel a little bit more confident, once in a while, maybe once you tried it, twice you tried it, 3 times you tried it, once that becomes a little bit more of something you're confident in, then seek a slightly more permanent movement within your company to become a proper Scrum Master or acting Scrum Master in someone's stead when they are away on holidays for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks. That would give you a little bit more of a proper feel of it day to day, as opposed to just doing it once and thinking, oh, I know how it goes. Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, it's always easy when you see it only once. It's like going on a tourist trip somewhere to a beautiful country, and then you see their main street and you think, oh, what a nice place. But at the same time, then you haven't explored around a little bit, you haven't seen the ugly bits. And it's important to see the ugly bits, because we love our ugly bits, okay? And you need to embrace those too before you can convincingly be a good candidate for a role that you're pursuing. In conclusion, if you are neither of those roles, if you're somewhere completely different, if you are a sports coach, or if you are, I don't know, trench digger, I don't know, what I'm going to say to you is that it's not impossible, obviously, to transition and become a Scrum Master, but you still need to show some of that practical experience. You could, I don't know, volunteer in some way. You definitely need connections within the industry that will help you. I'm not going to say definitely need them, but they will be definitely helpful for you. And I also think that considering one of those roles that I just listed, perhaps not necessarily project manager, requires completely different training, but let's say something that is slightly easier to step into, like software development, junior software developer within Agile environment, then perhaps you make a leap within the organization or do something. First, you need to enter the industry of software and digital product delivery, where these kind of release trains are happening. Do some research, again, in the book and in other places. you can find that information in terms of that directs you a little bit further in terms of where to look for it. But yeah, it is not impossible to transition into our space, or even being outside of it, except perhaps you would need to consider middle steps before you try and leap straight to the target. I think that is kind of how I would wrap it up for now. And there will be certainly more videos like this. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you like it, subscribe. This was Dmitry from joinagile.com, and there will be more videos for you, my friends. I'll talk to you soon.